Kia ora, welcome to Central News for Friday the 8th of August. I'm Hilary Entwistle. Waikato councils are now formally getting underway with a collaboration project aimed at making significant savings on their $160 million a year annual road maintenance spending. The work involved is being supported by a $250,000 grant from the New Zealand Transport Agency, which funds roading projects nationally and therefore has a clear interest in supporting greater efficiency. The joint roading work under a Road Asset Technical Accord established by the Waikato councils is being carried out with help from the Waikato Mayoral Forum. Hauraki Mayor John Tregidga, who chairs the forum's roading governance group, says he is pleased to see the Road Asset Technical Accord work getting underway. Claims by a Tauranga City councillor that 300 additional car parks will be needed in the central city when Trustpower moves its head office to town are being disputed. Councillor Rick Kurak this week made the claim that a deal has been done over Trustpower's parking arrangements to cater for staff at its new Durham Street offices. The $25 million three-storey development will include 75 car parking spaces on site, and the company has more than 400 staff. Rick says saying the flood of additional daily parking demand will force ratepayers to pay for a new $22 to $25 million parking building much sooner than anticipated. Volunteer divers are taking on wintry water in Pilot Bay later this month to clean up the mess that others have left behind. About 20 divers and supporters are involved in the Project Aware event to remove rubbish that accumulates under the harbour water. Everything from car tyres, plastic bottles, beer cans, fishing rods and anything else that falls off or is thrown from boats. They are supported by sponsors including the Bay Plenty Regional Council, New World, Tauranga City Council and Enviro Waste. The Project Aware Foundation is a collective of scuba divers devoted to protecting the oceans one dive at a time. The group has been operating for about 20 years, supporting divers acting in their own communities to protect oceans, removing trash from the seabed and protecting marine species. The Bay of Plenty recorded the most sunshine hours in the country in July, according to the latest NIWA climate report. Tauranga was the sunniest out of the 6 main centres observed by the Weather Organisation, recording a total of 1,433 hours of sunshine. July was a dry month for most parts of the country, with the Bay of Plenty receiving less than 50% of its normal rainfall. New Zealand's Best Emerging Event title has been taken out by Bay Park's NZ V8 Jet Sprint Championship. The inaugural Bay Park Stadium Jet Sprints beat 5 other finalists, including the NRL Auckland Nines, the Wellington Jazz Festival, Christchurch's Festival of Transitional Architecture, and Marako's Eye on Nature event at the New Zealand Association of Event Professionals Awards held in Christchurch. Bay Plenty Jet Sprints has won the right to host the event again next year after 15,000 spectators turned out to watch the world's first V8 jet sprints held inside a stadium arena. The NZAEP Awards recognise events that have positively impacted New Zealand, its regions or local communities. Now for our marine forecast for Saturday, west coast Raglan, southwest 25 knots, and dying out Saturday night, and heavy southwest swell easing too on Saturday as the day goes on. Your high tide is at 8:30 a.m. East Coast Bay of Plenty, southwest 25 knots, easing to a southerly of 15 knots late morning and dying out overnight. Your high tide is at 5:41 in the evening. Just ahead, the TEL ahead of schedule. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. The Tauranga Eastern Link is said to be a road of national significance and is well ahead of schedule. I spoke with the project manager to find out how they got so ahead.
Well, a lot of it is through hard work on the contractor side, also good weather. So with the droughts that the farmers have been having, we've been kind of pretty happy about that because it means that we can get on and build. So no offence to the farmers, but from the construction point of view, it is helpful. Although keeping the dust down has been a challenge. The project is also ahead because of some of the settlement requirements that we had on the project, building in peat. So there's going to be settlement, and therefore they were conservative in their estimation, and there wasn't as much settlement as they expected. So that's also helped.
Are you coming in on budget still?
We are coming in on budget. The project has an allocation, and at the start of the project, before it's tendered or let, you set a price. We are currently in under that because in the tender box we got some competitive prices. So we are officially under budget, which is a great place to be. But the actual contract itself is a fixed price, lump sum, so it will come in at about the rate that they tendered for, subject to variations that come up.
Do you think the cost of this road balances out the economic benefit to the country?
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits that do come from the TEL. We've got access to the port for the freight. We've got growth in terms of housing and opening up areas for future development. We've got the speed of trucks and vehicles coming along the route, and we've got the reliability of the journey time. So if you can make the journey time reliable, then that's really good for all the trucking companies. So yeah, there are an awful lot of benefits that come from it. So I think the region is in a good space.
This road is said to benefit Tauranga socially. How so?
Yeah, well, I suppose part of that previous discussion is that people can get to where they want to go quicker. So they're going to be maybe more inclined to go to Whakatane or to the Eastern Bay or to Rotorua and Central because it's not as far. It doesn't take as long. It's also they might be more inclined to look at jobs elsewhere, or people from outside of the region will be looking into Tauranga to see jobs that are here because it doesn't take as long to get there. As well as that, roads open up opportunity, and that's the reality. Infrastructure does that. So yeah, the Bay of Plenty is going to be effectively a smaller place because it doesn't take as long to get places.
You can keep up to date with the TEL progress by visiting nzta.gov.nz/projects/TEL. Loan to value ratios were introduced by the Reserve Bank in October last year, meaning that home buyers must have a deposit of at least 20% before banks can approve funding. Anne-Marie spoke with Kevin Dean from Kevin Dean Real Estate to find out what effect the LVR has had on the rural areas and if the Kiwi quarter acre dream still exists.
Absolutely it does, but whether it's the classic Kiwi quarter acre or a new 600 square metre section in the new subdivision, or maybe an apartment in Auckland, because obviously the push towards urbanisation and going up rather than out with our land use, certainly it still exists. And there's still a lot of young couples out there, and not so young couples too actually, still trying to get into their first home after paying rent for many years and going, what have I got left to show for it? I know I've had a roof over my head, but maybe if I'd been able to put that money into something positive, I'd actually have something positive and tangible to show for it.
Wes, are you seeing KiwiSaver helping the
Definitely.
people get into new homes?
KiwiSaver, for those who have been in KiwiSaver for the last few years, and particularly a couple who have both been contributing, they've got some sizable deposits there to put into KiwiSaver. We have got a cap at $300,000 for that home within the regions, a little bit more for the cities, but for $300,000, that's keeping them out of perhaps the Hamiltons, perhaps a little bit more, and bringing them into the Morrinsvilles and the Matamatas and Cambridge fringes on some areas where they can get into their own home, paying a positive mortgage and locking in some pretty good interest rates at the same time.
How is the rural real estate market at the moment?
The rural real estate market itself is always quiet through the winter.
Right.
You know, our farmers are well into calving, our dry stock farmers have got lambing knocking on the door, and of course it's just not a great time on the farm to perhaps be showing them. We have had a number of transactions through the winter, but traditionally this is our plateau period. It's also a time of contemplation for a lot of people who are perhaps considering coming to the market. Do I want to do another one of these carvings again, getting up and carving a cow at 3 in the morning in the rain, and you know all the
all the joys that
all
go
the
with
joys
it.
that go with it, absolutely. And of course, coupled with the payout taking a big slice this week, that's obviously adding a pretty big dose of reality for a lot of people as to where to from here.
So we've seen the payout drop from $7 to $6. Does what happened on the farm affect our regional towns' real estate markets?
Certainly does. What it basically does is that farmers will go back to the basics rather than the frilly cream on top.
Okay.
So they still need to do the basics, and I suppose the rural towns, they're not as hit as hard as perhaps you might think, because a lot of the people who live in the rural towns service those farmers, be it through the meat factories, the dairy factories, and the essential trades. You know, you cannot not get your water pump fixed. You cannot not get your tractor fixed, for instance. So a lot of those guys still stay in employment, although they might just see the hours come back a little bit in the trades and the engineering, for instance. But overall, we still continue on.
For more details, see kdre.co.nz. Coming up next, seismic strengthening of old and the new. Welcome back to Central News. Seismic assessments of buildings are being carried out all over the country, with the government passing the final reading of the Building Earthquake-Prone Buildings Amendment Bill in May. I spoke with an engineer who carries out these assessments to find out whether the type of soil a building is built on can affect the strength.
The soils class has a major effect on the seismic rating of the building. So it's encouraged that you engage with geotech engineers before you jump into a detailed seismic assessment, and you got to understand that the soils class is based on deeper layers of soil rather than the soil layers seen immediately below the building foundations.
Are there certain soils then that we shouldn't be building on?
No, that is not the case. You can virtually build on anything. You just have to spend more money on the foundations, I guess. Yeah.
67% of new build standards is recommended, but 34% and over is deemed okay. Would you be recommending that people aim for 67%?
The higher the percentage NBS of the building, the lower the risk to the occupants in the event of an earthquake. New Zealand Society of Earthquake Engineers recommends 67%. Because the risk of the capacity being exceeded is 5 times that of a new building, whereas for 34 it's 10 times that of a new building. So the owners should think about what risk they're happy to live with and choose. However, we have been encouraging them to get options done for certain percentages, get costs in hand, and generally there is a little sweet spot that you can hit. And this is the point where you might spend a little bit of money and get significant increase in the percentage NBS, and anything after that becomes so expensive that you may not go ahead with the project. So we usually recommend them to try and get it to another level up, spend some money and get reduced risk to the occupants, rather than saying, 67 is too difficult for me to achieve.
If you were to compare the methods of earthquake strengthening from the late 70s to now, would it be quite different?
Yes, yeah. We have, as engineers, we have studied the performance of earthquakes, of buildings in earthquakes since 70s to now. We know more about how buildings behave, how earthquakes create forces in buildings. So our strengthening methods have become a lot smarter, and with more and more technology coming into play as well. The answers today can be a lot more innovative than in the past. And end of the day, it causes less disruption to the occupants, which means less money spent and everybody wins.
You've assessed over 500 buildings. In your opinion, what should owners designing new buildings be aware of?
From our prior experiences with earthquakes, generally regular structural systems perform really well. So if you're designing a new building, I would investigate regular systems because you're going to get a good performance. Secondly, one of the main things for me is they should be asking, is the failure mode for this building going to be ductile? And just to give you an understanding of what ductile is and what isn't, the opposite of ductile is brittle when it comes to building performance. And you can see I've got a carrot and a hanger. The carrot's a lot thicker than the hanger, but when this gets exposed to any kind of force, it snaps. It's quite a brittle way of failing, so it's a lot of risk for the occupants. And if a building performs like this, and I put forces like that into a hanger, and yes, it is yielding, it is deflecting, but it doesn't collapse, which means the structure could get, pretty badly damaged at the end of the earthquake, but the risk to your occupants is lower. So just one question, is the failure mode going to be ductile?
How is ductility measured?
You're using ductility in your design standards. You choose the ductility that your building would like to achieve and design for it.
Your local council will have information on their website about their latest policy on seismic strengthening in your area. Coming up next, romance written in the pages. Welcome back. Next week, a conference will be held in Auckland and it will be a romantic affair. But the people aren't interested in each other, they're interested in each other's books. I caught up with local romance author Nicola Davidson. Now, you're about to publish a book, but this book is a little bit different because it's actually not going to be published in a physical form, it's going to be published straight to digital. Is that common nowadays?
It's very common. Most author contracts, that I've heard of nowadays, they are either a combination of digital and print or just straight digital.
So does that mean that gone are the days of the old paperback and that beautiful smell?
I think that print will always have a place because there are so many people that are really passionate about holding a book in their hands and they will just refuse to read something on an electronic device. But in terms of accessibility, in terms of price, in terms of how fast they can get it to market, digital has a very powerful presence in the industry.
Does it mean more money in the author's hand because there's less cost of publishing press, I guess, to actually make a physical book?
Yes, most royalties for digital books are a lot higher for the author. The print ones tend to be around about the 10 to 12% of the cover price, whereas digital, you could be looking around 30 to 35%.
Now, your book is a romance novel, and that's your specialty. And there is a conference coming up, 12th to the 14th of August, and it is the Romance Writers of New Zealand. What is the industry like here in New Zealand?
We have some amazing authors in New Zealand that are doing really, really well on a global scale. We have some, who write the category length romances, which is more your Mills and Boon. That's probably one of the most popular labels. But we also have another number of authors who write single title, which is the longer novel length. Across the categories, we've got, paranormal authors like Nalini Singh or Shirley Gray. We've got historical authors, Bronwyn Evans, Wendy Vella. You've got some really fantastic authors and they'll all be attending the conference. And it's a wonderful opportunity for the authors, from all around the country to come together and talk industry, talk trends. They get some amazing speakers from overseas, agents, editors, New York Times best-selling authors, so it's a really fantastic occasion.
Is there a big romance novel readership in New Zealand?
I think there is. I think that readers everywhere, romance is the most, popular genre in the world. It's a $1 billion industry. And I think that, yes, New Zealand readers love romance just as much as anywhere else.
What makes romance romance?
I think it's a combination of things, really. I think that it's the escape. Sometimes, you know, you have a bad day, but you can read a romance novel and just think, you know, there is a chance of a happy ending, there is a chance of having, you know, something wonderful happen. And for some it's a reflection of, you know, their own lives, you know, how you can overcome obstacles in your life and make it better. But I think the main thing about romance is that it's hope. You know, there's always just this wonderful hope of a happy ending, and I think everyone needs a little bit of that in their lives.
Nicola's new book will be released next Tuesday. Now for our weather for the weekend. Hamilton, your Saturday is going to be mainly fine. You do have a southwesterly, but it's dying out. Your expected high is 11 and an overnight low of -3. The rest of the Waikato becoming mainly fine in the morning, southwesterly dying out. Paeroa 12 and an overnight low of 0. Matamata 10 and an overnight low of -1. Te Awamutu 11 and -3. Tokoroa 9 and -3. Tauranga mainly fine with southwesterlies dying out there too. You've got an expected high of 12 and an overnight low of 1. The rest of the bay mainly fine, southwesterlies dying out too. Te Puke, you've got 11 and an overnight low of 2. Sunday for you, Hamilton, will be mainly fine with evening cloud and light winds. That evening cloud will be bringing slightly warmer temperatures. You've got an expected high of 12 and an overnight low of 3. The rest of the Waikato mainly fine and evening cloud and light winds. Paeroa 13 and 5. Matamata 11 and an overnight low of 5. Te Awamutu, your expected high is 12 and an overnight low of 3. Tokoroa 10 and 2. Tauranga mainly fine with light winds. Your expected high is 13 and an overnight low of 6. The rest of the bay plenty, mainly fine with light winds. Te Puke, you can expect a high of 12 and an overnight low of 5. That is Central News for tonight and this week. If you have something happening in your community that you would like for us to come along to, you can like us on Facebook, Central News TV, or email us at news@tvcentral.co.nz. Annie will be here next week for more of your stories from the Bay and the Waikato. Until then, I'm Hilary Entwistle. I hope you have a lovely evening and a fantastic weekend.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.